Oh, Oda Nobunaga. Ooh. Alright. Well, this is the Akado Armory, Nagamaki, and Obi. Less important, but still cool. This, right here, I'll go ahead and just take it off here really quick. This is one of my recent acquisitions from Combat Con. You can tell, because this has that Combat Con label right there. There's a very limited run of these that they did for some of the staff, and I think these actually turned out really, really beautiful. So what is a Nagamaki? Now, a Nagamaki is a very uncommon type of a sword. As far as I know, there's no manuals for it. There is a few accounts of some of the famous people during the Sengoku Jidai or the Warring States period in Japan that had bodyguard troops that were carrying these. So I believe it filled a very similar role to what we'd think is like a montante nowadays. Let's go ahead and just dispense with the scabbard here really quick. Beautiful scabbard. This right here is an up-close shot of the blade. You can see it's a single-edge blade, all the way blunt on the back, as is typical with most Japanese swords. It is very, very sharp, and if you look down the blade, it's kind of hard to tell, but it looks like it has that clay tempering that they do when they harden up the blades. One of the major differences between Japanese swords versus European swords is they're not through-tempered, meaning they're not all the same hardness in the blade. A lot of the time when they're making these, they'll actually take their finger. You can kind of see it right there. They'll take their finger and they'll rub clay up on here when they fire it. So the edge over here gets very, very hard, but the back stays relatively soft. Now, there's a few different things that does to the sword. The primary thing that it does is it keeps your edge hard and your back soft, so you can sharpen it really, really well. And if it bends in battle, you can just step on it, push your leg down, and bend it back. There is a lot of period accounts talking about chipping in the edge, and there's not a whole ton of blades that show a ton of repairs of being cut out. So these I would treat as more disposable than a typical European longsword. So these were obviously very highly treasured. We typically don't want to be cutting into very, very heavy, hard things with the edge on a sword like this. This has a brass fitter right there. That part of the sword is to help it stick into the scabbard a lot better than if it was just a steel blade. I'll go ahead and show you here really quick. Put this back in here. You always want to make sure not to run the edge along the inside of the scabbard as well. You can see that we have that bend, so it'll only go in one way. That brass piece helps to keep it from shaking out. So a lot of the techniques to draw these weapons, you're actually placing your thumb right there, and you're pushing it out to get that brass piece out before you can draw it, which is why the Japanese people do a lot of that really big quick draw stuff with their hand mounted on the scabbard right here. Now the blade on this sword is the same size as a katana blade, maybe a little bit longer, and there are ones of these that go all over the place. There's one that's more bent. This one specifically has pretty much the exact same katana blade, but a handle that's about twice as long. Now, why would you want a handle that's about twice as long? You know, katana, we're all the way up here. We can perform those really quick cuts. It's small and useful. Nagamaki, the longer handle, allows you to have greater cutting ability up close. Now, a lot of these are treated as pole arms, meaning it'd be competing in the same category as things like spears, going against cavalry and stuff like that, but it's still short enough that if we are in a Japanese house, we're fighting each other, I don't lose a ton of range for something like a katana if I choke up really far. With a yari, a spear, if I choke up really far, I can still kind of cut with it out here if I have to, but I believe these were more designed to be like this, where we're fighting in the same range as things like katanas. We have so much more blade presence that we can really just swat away pretty much anything that would be of a similar blade length. So I believe these were more likely used against people that were using katana, would be my guess. Kind of shorter blades. And this is just so overpowering in that cut, because we have that massive handle grip length. We can do all kinds of stuff that a katana can't. It's not going to be as fast, but if somebody cuts at you, you can cut right into it because you have that massive lever. You can knock aside just about anything. And sparring with these, I found that to be pretty much the case. Usually if these will win, it's because they swatted something aside, they've done some massive clearing action, They've come down on their opponent. If they lose, it's because the katana closes in and you can't quite snug it up enough. So it's a compromise weapon between I want a little bit more power than a katana, but not as much length as a spear. But a lot of you people are asking, how does this cut? I think it cuts pretty dang well. I'll go ahead and pull some B-roll out over here so you can see us cutting at Combat Con, both tatami and otherwise. The grip is extremely comfortable. They've done the ruggedized version of this where they've snugged it down really hard, because traditional Japanese wraps, if you do this a whole ton, they'll fall apart. This one, I believe, has been epoxied over so it won't come out. And the brass pin that keeps the handle in, so when they're trying to take the sword apart, traditionally you should just be able to pop that pin out and then the handle slides off so you can clean the blade. This one doesn't have that because I requested it to be ruggedized. So they've epoxied in that brass pin, so it's a little bit harder to get out, but it's also not going to fall apart as easy. A lot of the tangs on these swords really only go down to about there. On katana, you might even only get a tang down to about right there. So easier to disassemble for Japanese swords, less durable than I'd say a peened construction from a long sword that you'd see. But these, holding it in my hand, the little reps, your fingers fit into that super well. You can choke up, you can choke down. My hands are not going to go anywhere, and I can really pull that through. You kind of have to chicken wing your arm just a little bit to get that snapping cut through whatever target you'd be cutting. So let's go ahead and do a couple of cuts here really quick. These are just your water bottles. On these, your reminder is we're trying to cut right here at the waist. So I'm standing back. Oh no, Oda Nobunaga. Ooh. You can see just how powerfully that snapped through that target. It's super controllable. Because it's the blade length of a katana, you really have a ton of maneuverability, especially since your handle is so long. You really only have to tip that back end to decide where you want that edge to go. You don't have to make extremely powerful, big long cuts to get an effective cut with this. Just because that lever is so long, you could probably just snap right through your target right there by just using that as the fulcrum and the lever right through wherever you need to go. Cutting from below on these is a little bit weird. I'm not exactly sure how you're supposed to cut with these. I've watched a couple of videos online of people cutting through $200 worth of tatami in one swing with these. I'm not going to do that. But I believe, kind of like your longsword, you'd be choked up here and you're kind of pushing with your lead hand to push that off. With this, I'm pulling this across my body to go into that high ox guard, post di finestra, whatever that would be. If I'm aiming at my bottle, it's a pretty incredible cut for not a lot of power, which makes me feel really good. Because this sword is not perfectly sharp. This is just straight out of the box, factory edge, but because of the way the katanas are built, it has just a single bevel all the way down to the end, which is awesome. That lends a lot to good cutting, even if it does take some edge damage. That's another advantage of a big, powerful sword, is even if you don't have the perfectly sharp edge, the weight and velocity of the blade should carry you through. So swinging up from this side, kind of a similar thing, I'm going to take my pommel, or whatever passes for a pommel in Japanese technology, and kind of swing that up into my shoulder right there. And without locking out my elbow so I don't damage myself, give myself tennis elbow, kind of pulling it that way. Didn't quite get through the bottle just because I snaked through that last little bit, but you can see how powerful of a cut that makes without having to do anything too crazy. And that can all be done in the same range, like I said, as a katana. So if I can make those big, powerful cuts in the same range in a short hallway, that's going to give you a massive advantage in tight castle corridors in the Japanese house. Pretty much anything that's required katana length, this is meant to be a very powerful subsidy to whatever we'd be expecting.
Where shadows play, dragons rise at break of day, hammers echo through the mist, Twilight whispers magic kiss.